Jordan is trying its best to partner with the international community in order to be able to shoulder the burden of addressing the needs of the refugee community in Jordan, and unfortunately the refugee community is not limited only to the Syrian refugees in Jordan. And it is my pleasure to welcome to this panel His Excellency Mr. Erik Ullenhag, the Ambassador of the Kingdom of Sweden in Jordan, a country that's active on the international scene when it comes to addressing the refugees' needs. I give the floor to His Excellency.
Salam alaikum. Minister, Excellencies, ladies and gentlemen, I'm sorry, but I can't continue in Arabic. I will speak in English. I'm trying to learn, but it's not the easiest language to learn. It also reminds me of people coming to Sweden as refugees, trying to learn a new language. I meet them in the streets, I meet them in the shops, I meet them in refugee camps, and they struggle with the Swedish. And sometimes Swedish people say, why didn't you get the Swedish faster? Coming to this region, trying to learn Arabic, I'm a little bit humble when it's come to learn a new language. I always remind myself that the fact that I was born in Sweden, a free and rich country, democratic, peaceful, was not because I did something good. I'm not extra talented. I don't deserve to be born in freedom, but I was born in freedom. When I think about the families that lost their kids in Aleppo, when I think about the people, the families, or the kids that asked their mother or father in Yemen today what they were going to eat for dinner, I remind myself that these people didn't do anything wrong. They just had the bad luck of being born in poverty, in starvation, or in a situation of war. We were reminded this morning that more than 60 million people in the world today are refugees. If I'm coming from a rich and free country, having the luck of living in peace, for me it's a moral obligation to try to do something to help the people that didn't have the same luck. 20 million of the refugees are here in Jordan, in the region, the Middle East region. This number one in the world that we have 20 million refugees in the MENA region. And one of the countries that really stood up and took a human responsibility was Jordan, taking hundreds of thousands of people from the war in Syria, before that the Iraqis, before that the Palestinians. As a fellow human, I sincerely would like to thank the Jordanian government, the Jordanian people, because that made the world a better place. That some countries stood up and said, we see what's happening, we see the bombs, we see the war, and we try to help people. It is challenging. It's tough being Minister of Education and getting people into schools that haven't been to schools for years. It's tough being in a government, taking a lot of people into the country, but it's something that actually made the world better. And for that, I sincerely thank Jordan. Shukran. I know that for the moment, the discussions concerning migration all around the world, in Sweden, in Europe, and in other countries, is more about closed borders. It's more about challenges. It's more about problems than about possibilities. But let us remind ourselves that through history, migration has been an extremely strong force for development. You can look at my home country, Sweden. We used to be a country that people left. 1.5 million Swedes in the 19th and 20th century left Sweden for America because Sweden was a very poor country. 300,000 of these people came back to Sweden, but more than 1 million people stayed in America. It was good for America, because talented people came to America. And it was good for Sweden, because people without possibilities had the possibilities to build a new future in a new country. And it also came in ideas, monies to Sweden. You can say, is that true also today, that migration can be a positive force? Of course it is. Look at a country such as Jordan or Sweden. But take Jordan, for example. Hundreds of thousands of people going to Gulf countries and work. We have a couple of thousand in Sweden from Jordan, studying, working, or living in Sweden. All the people coming to Canada, United States, studying, coming back to Jordan with new ideas. I see the challenges with forced migration, but we can never, when we speak about migration, forget all the possibilities we also have by migration. And migration won't go away. We have a young population in Africa, we have a young population in the MENA region, and we have an older population in Europe and other countries. And of course, many of these people could have a new possibility in Sweden or in Europe or in other places. Of course, forced migration is never a good thing. It's never a good thing when people need to leave because of the war or the oppression. Of course, we will do what we can to combat the root causes of forced migration. But at the same time, when people are forced to leave, I sincerely believe, and Sweden sincerely believes, that the international community has the challenge to try to do something together. Before going into the international community and what we should do together, I will say some more words about the Swedish experience. Sweden is, as Jordan, an immigrant country. It used to be a country that people left, but today 18% of the Swedish population is foreign-born. In 1950s it was 3%, now it's 18%. One of my favorite cities in Sweden is Malmö. Quite small city, a little bit more than 300,000 inhabitants. But in 300,000 inhabitants. But in Malmö, you have 178 nationalities living in this city. 178. The members of the United Nations are 193. And when the mayor of Malmö came to speak to all the ambassadors in Stockholm last summer, she asked us, couldn't you find somebody from Liechtenstein? Because we don't have anyone from Liechtenstein in Malmö. The goal for her was to have all the countries of the United Nations represented in Malmö. Why? Some of you might have seen Malmö on the news. Sometimes we have challenges there. We have neighborhoods that are challenging. But that she realized, and I sincerely believe, that Sweden is a better country when we have almost all the languages spoken in the world spoken in Sweden. Sweden is the same size as Jordan. Imagine what kind of new business opportunities it has opened for Sweden to have a lot of people speaking Arabic, speaking Persian, speaking Chinese, and all the other languages of the world. In the last couple of years, Sweden hasn't taken the same responsibility as Jordan, but for being Europe, we have taken quite big responsibility. The biggest year for us in asylum seekers receiving was in 2015, when 163,000 asylum seekers came to Sweden. You all remember the debate back then. Even Sweden took measures to tighten up the migration laws, and today and that changed the situation, so the year after we had 29,000 asylum seekers in Sweden. But I will underline that we will continue to take a responsibility and together with other people. Has Sweden been successful then? Am I right saying it's a good thing taking immigrants? It depends who is answering the question. But I can give you some facts. Every third doctor in Sweden is born in another country. Every fourth dentist in Sweden is born in another country. 50% of the people cleaning restaurants, working at restaurants, or working in other services are coming from other countries. Many of the new entrepreneurs in Sweden are born in other countries. We don't have the same demographic challenge as the rest of Europe because people came here. And if the minister is successful with other people, I know that the challenge is huge, but some of the people will stay, some of the Syrian refugees also in Jordan. And we will see in 10, 15 years that with the right education, maybe one of the biggest companies in this country will be created by one of these refugees, as it happened in Sweden. You know, Sweden has changed, and overall it has been a good thing for Sweden taking refugees. But focusing on Jordan and other countries that are taking the biggest responsibility for the moment. Of course, we need to find ways to make it possible in the long run to go back. We don't see it now, but we need to have peace in Syria. And we need to have the possibility for people to voluntarily go back and build their future. And when you ask the Syrian refugees in Jordan, they say, we want to go back after the war. But until the day it's possible to go back, I think it's crucial for Jordan, as it has been for Sweden, to try to open up the society, to try to use the time that people have in this country at the best possible way. In Sweden, we have a different challenge because we have the language. So the first thing we try to do with refugees coming is getting the Swedish language, because otherwise you have a tough time in Stockholm. But the second thing is the same thing that Minister Omar Assas was touching on. It is education and school. And I would like to underline and thank Omar Assas for underlining the basic idea that the right to education is a right and a matter of human rights. And I understand that the teachers and the parents having kids in schools in Jordan with double shift might now and then ask people, is it really how it should be? But think about the alternative. If you have a lot of young people in this country with no schools to go to, no prosperity, no possibilities in the long run to contribute to Jordan or to Syria or to some other countries where they will live in the long run, the alternative is much, much worse. We see the challenge. We tried from the international community, including Sweden, to support the education here in this country, and we will continue to do that. But education is crucial. And the minister also pointed out one other thing. It's not the same thing with refugees coming. If you are 14 years old and you have been 5 years away from school, even Sweden with a welfare state, we are struggling. A teacher is struggling when you have a 14 years old that don't know how to read or write. But from our experience, and I think we're going to see the same thing in Jordan, the young kids, if they start in school the same time as people born in Jordan and Sweden, they'll be fairly successful. The third thing, and I know it's more controversial in Jordan, but I sincerely appreciate that you're trying, it is job opportunities. And I can understand people somewhere in Jordan saying that, you know, we have a high unemployment, we too. Yeah? But every lesson from economical history is that if you create a job, if you open up labor markets, that can create more jobs. And what we have been trying to do, the international community, together with Jordan, to open up for labor permits for Syrian refugees, I think in the long run it's going to be crucial for this country and for the whole region. In these cases, we're impressed by what Jordan is trying to do. The double shift in schools, opening up for labor permits, and I'm proud being Swedish looking at IKEA as the first company that together with the Jordan River Foundation will employ Syrian refugees and Jordanian women in the same project, giving the possibility to contribute to the society, and also giving the possibility both to women that are Syrian and the women that are Jordanian. It wasn't sponsored by the Swedish government, so I can't take any credit from it, but still, IKEA is a Swedish company. At the end, what should the international community do? The first most important thing is, of course, combat the roots of forced migration. I think people in this country understood earlier than the rest of the world that the conflict in Syria might be going on for years. But I think even people in this country are quite surprised that it is going on and going on and going on. We need to draw the lessons. We need to stop the violence. We need to learn how could we avoid a similar situation next time. The second thing that is crucial for the international community is find ways for global responsibility and burden sharing. I know that most people in this room knows this, but half of the refugees are in 10 countries in the world. And I can tell you, it's not the richest countries in the world that are hosting half of the refugees in the world. Almost 90% of the refugees are in poor countries, in poor regions. Sweden is trying at the European level to strongly encourage more countries to take bigger responsibility and have burden sharing. Together with Jordan and Jordanian government, we were hosting, together with the United States and other countries, a conference in January this year, bringing up the idea of burden sharing and international responsibility also in the international scene. 65 million refugees is a huge challenge, but it's possible to solve if we work together. The third thing that is crucial for the international community and for host countries, I would say, is all the time find a way to treat people with dignity. Refugees are not just numbers in the statistics, they are human beings. We need to do it according to international law. We need to respect the principle of non-refoulement. We need to do it in respect of human rights. We need also all the time, I'm representing a government with a feminist foreign policy. We need to have the feminist glasses on. 48% of the refugees are women and girls that are extra vulnerable to trafficking, gender-based violence, and risks that we need to see. And I have been amazed traveling around Jordan and visiting refugee camps and what UNHCR are doing in the refugee camps together with Jordan authorities in this country. This country is quite good with meeting people with dignity. If you haven't been to refugee camps, if you have the possibility, visit them. You have in one of the camps shops that are growing, entrepreneurs that are coming, companies that are growing, people are empowered, and it's amazing. The fourth thing is something that many people have mentioned in the morning for the international community. We need to support the host countries. If we don't manage to solve and support the challenges that Jordan and Lebanon and other countries have, then these countries are going to be the next crisis. I don't think so, but we need to remember ourselves. We need to support the UNHCR and IAM and the United Nations. I'm proud to represent a country where we have one of the biggest donors to UN and UNHCR. It is through these organizations we can help the refugees the best. And we need to try to find a way to increase resettlement. Sweden is increasing resettlement now, and our resettlement program from 2,000 to 5,000 refugees. It's small numbers, but if more rich countries did the same thing, then we should create legal possibilities, legal ways for people to come into Europe. During the time I've been speaking, 360 human beings have been forced to leave their homes. Every minute around the world, for the moment, 15 human beings every minute. I think I've spoken around 15 minutes. That's 360 human beings. Finally, I would like to underline again, remember, a refugee is a human being. Remember also that migration will continue. No matter what politicians in Europe or in other countries are saying, it will continue. People will continue to try to move. But if we work together, then we can give the protection, we can give the dignity, and we can also use the positive effects of migration. And I'm sincerely grateful for the good cooperation between the international community, Jordan, and from the Swedish side, the good cooperation we have. We have a lot to learn from Jordan, and sometimes maybe we have something to learn from Sweden. Thank you for listening. Shukran.
I thank Ambassador Ullenhag for sharing with us his country's experience and for showing deep understanding of what Jordan is trying to do to be a host for a huge number of refugees. And I thank him also for the points that he raised, and I'm sure we will be discussing many of the points raised by him in our debate.